The dimly lit pub hummed with laughter, the clinking of beer bottles, and the muffled sound of an old stereo playing a high-life tune. It was a lively Friday night, filled with men seeking to drown their worries in alcohol and women swaying their hips to the beat. Oliver sat at a corner table, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing the rim of his half-empty beer bottle. He barely noticed the chaotic scene around him. His gaze was fixed on the beautiful woman seated across from him, Sophia, his girlfriend of 2 years. She had her long, manicured fingers wrapped around her drink, occasionally twirling the straw between her perfectly painted lips. Sophia was everything a man could want. At least, that was what Oliver had thought. She was breathtakingly beautiful, her caramel skin glowing under the dim pub lights, her body a perfect blend of curves and elegance. He had met her when he was rich, or at least, that's what she believed. She never questioned their love because he always had money to pay for her hair or buy her luxuries. But one day, to Sophia's surprise, Oliver called her on the phone narrating how he had lost everything he had owned and how customs seized his container. Weeks after this call, Oliver packed into a public yard and began to work at the construction building. That was when Sophia began to question their love. If she was truly in love with Oliver? But what she didn't know was that Oliver had deliberately kept his wealth a secret. He wanted to know if Sophia truly loved him like she said. Tonight, sitting across from Sophia, he had an uneasy feeling in his chest that she would disappoint him. And then it happened. A sleek, black Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon rolled up outside the pub. The conversations inside momentarily hushed as people turned to see who would step out of such an expensive ride in their small neighborhood. A man emerged, tall and confident, his wristwatch glinting under the dim lights. He was dressed in a designer suit, his aura exuding wealth and power. He didn't waste time scanning the room. His eyes locked on Sophia instantly. Oliver stiffened. The stranger walked straight to their table, his polished shoes clicking against the tiled floor. Without hesitation, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek, gold-embossed card. He placed it gently in front of Sophia, his voice smooth and confident. "I like what I see," the man said, flashing a charming smile. "Call me. You are beautiful and you deserve a rich man." Sophia blinked, her perfectly drawn eyebrows arching in surprise. She had been questioning her love for Oliver, and now, then, to Oliver's utter shock, she reached for the card. "Don't," Oliver said, his voice firm. Sophia hesitated, looking between Oliver and the wealthy man standing before her. "Don't take it," Oliver repeated, his heart pounding. Sophia sighed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, Oliver, stop being dramatic." His breath hitched. "You're seriously taking that? Why?" She gave him a long, unreadable look before letting out a short laugh. "Oliver, let's be honest. What are we even doing? Where is this relationship going? You can't take care of me the way I want. I need a man who can give me the life I deserve." His chest tightened. "Sophia, are you serious? But I have been taking care of you for over 2 years. Haven't I been doing that before having a problem with my business?" "Oliver, stop wailing like a child. You get it before and not now. I can't do this." "Sophia, are you serious? But you said that you love me, that you can do anything for our love." She leaned back in her chair, tilting her head as if she were only now realizing something. "Oliver, I can't keep pretending. I want more. I want luxury, comfort. You can't give me that. Love doesn't put food on the table. I said those things when you were a man, not now that you are." Oliver felt as if the air had been knocked out of his lungs. "You're ending things over this?" She chuckled, shaking her head. "No, Oliver. I'm ending things because I'm tired of waiting for you to become a man who can afford me." And just like that, she stood, tucking the card into her purse. She didn't even look back as she sauntered toward the rich man, who placed a possessive hand on the small of her back as they walked out of the pub together. Oliver sat there, frozen. The noise of the pub faded into the background, replaced by the deafening silence inside his chest. She had left. Just like that. The woman he had loved so much, the one he had planned his life around, had walked away without a second thought. But what she didn't know was the truth. Oliver wasn't a poor man. He wasn't a struggling construction worker. He was a billionaire. And he was the one that sent the rich man to test her. Tonight, she had failed the test. He picked up his beer, staring at the bubbles rising to the surface. His heart ached, but only for a moment. Then, a slow, bitter smile curled at the corners of his lips. She had just made the biggest mistake of her life. That night, Oliver returned to his small, face me I face you bungalow, the same place where he had hidden his true identity for months. He walked past the dimly lit corridors, ignoring the smell of fried fish and the sounds of neighbors arguing over water bills. As he reached his room, the door beside his creaked open, and a familiar voice rang out. "Ah, lover boy, are you back?" Oliver turned, and there she was, Olivia, the neighborhood troublemaker. She was standing barefoot at her doorway, dressed in a faded wrapper and an oversized t-shirt that had long lost its original color. Her hair was woven into tight cornrows, and her face bore no trace of makeup. She was the complete opposite of Sophia, rough, loud, and utterly local. Too local for his liking. The only thing Oliver liked about her was her cooking skills. Apart from that, everything about her was totally local, and to make it worse, her name was Olivia, a name that sounded like his own, and she was laughing at him. "I hear that your babe has finally left you and followed a big man," Olivia teased, crossing her arms. "I said it before. I know that fine girls like her cannot stay with a poor man." Oliver said nothing. He just stared at her, wondering how she found out. She clicked her tongue. "Aya, lover boy is heartbroken." Then, before he could respond, she disappeared inside her room and returned with a steaming plate of food. "Take, eat." She pushed it into his hands. "It is not a crime for a poor man to fall in love. But you make mistakes. Gold diggers do not pity anyone." He looked down at the plate, pounded yam and a goosey soup. The aroma hit him, making him realize how hungry he was. He wanted to reject it, but he couldn't. Olivia was the only person he eats her food in that yard. She can cook for Africans. "Why are you giving me this?" he muttered, feigning to be angry. She shrugged. "Because I like your face when you are suffering." Then she grinned. "And because I don't like when people waste good food. I kept the food for you even before I heard about your breakup with your babe." Oliver exhaled, shaking his head. Olivia, the girl everyone in the compound called local. And yet, she was the only one who had shown him kindness tonight. The next morning, Oliver woke up with a heavy heart. The betrayal from last night sat like a weight in his chest, making it hard to breathe. He had barely slept, his mind replaying the moment Sophia took that man's card. The moment she walked away without a single glance back. For 2 years, he had loved her. 2 years of sacrifices, of making sure she never lacked anything, of believing she was the one. And yet, in the blink of an eye, she had discarded him like he was nothing. But Oliver wasn't just any man. He needed to see her, one last time, to make sure that she knew what she did. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was pain. Maybe it was the desperate need to hear her say that last night had been a mistake. Truth was that he loved her so much. So, he dressed up and headed to her apartment. Sophia lived in a slightly better part of town, in a one-bedroom apartment Oliver had helped her pay for when he was rich. She had always complained about wanting more, about wanting to live in an estate with security, with marble floors and chandeliers. Oliver had always told her, "One day, I'll give you all that and more." Now, he knew she never believed him. When he arrived, he knocked softly, his heart pounding. Seconds later, the door swung open, and there she was, Sophia, dressed in a silk robe, her skin glowing as if she had just stepped out of a warm bath. She looked more beautiful than ever, but her face twisted in annoyance the moment she saw him. "Oliver, what are you doing here?" He swallowed the lump in his throat. I needed to talk to you." She sighed and folded her arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Talk about what?" "Last night," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "Was that really how you wanted things to end?" She scoffed. "Oliver, what do you want me to say? That I regret it? That I made a mistake? Please, don't embarrass yourself." His chest ached. "Sophia, we've been together for 2 years. Did that mean nothing to you?" She laughed, a cold, heartless laugh that made his blood run cold. "Listen, Oliver, I won't lie to you. You were good to me, but love doesn't pay bills. You can't take care of me the way I want, and I've finally found someone who can." Oliver clenched his fists. "And you think that man will love you the way I did?" "I don't need love," she said, smirking. "I need security. And Oliver, let's be honest, you're not man enough to give me that." Her words sliced through him like a blade. And as he was still thinking about it, the young man came out from the room and wrapped his arms around Sophia's waist. Sophia smiled and gave Oliver a dreadful look. Oliver took a step back, moving his gaze from Sophia to the man holding her, trying to recognize the woman he had once loved. But she wasn't there. This wasn't his Sophia. This was a stranger. A stranger who had already erased him from her life. "Go home, Oliver," she said, shaking her head. "Move on. I already have." And with that, she shut the door in his face. The walk back to his compound felt longer than usual. His feet dragged against the dusty road. His shoulders slumped. He felt humiliated. He felt like a fool. How could he have been so blind? How could he have wasted 2 years on a woman who had never truly loved him? By the time he reached his compound, he barely had the strength to lift his head. Oliver stepped out of his yard, dressed in the same dusty jeans and worn-out t-shirt he always wore. His neighbors barely glanced at him. After all, he was just another struggling young man heading to work at the construction site. Or at least, that's what they thought. With his head slightly bowed, he made his way through the narrow streets, careful to maintain his act. But the moment he moved out of that street, he went inside a beautiful restaurant. Then, with practiced ease, he peeled off his dirty shirt, revealing a crisp white designer shirt underneath. He reached into his small bag, pulled out a neatly folded pair of black trousers, and quickly changed into them. Lastly, he slid his feet into polished leather shoes. The transformation was complete. From Oliver, the struggling laborer, he had become Oliver, the CEO of Olivex Group, one of the fastest-growing companies in the city. A black SUV pulled up a few minutes later, and his driver, Tony, stepped out. "Good morning, sir," Tony greeted with a smirk, opening the car door for him. The drive to his company was smooth, and as soon as he stepped into the grand building, the employees greeted him with respect. "Good morning, sir," they chorused as he walked past. But Oliver barely acknowledged them. He had only one thing on his mind. The moment he reached his office, he found his best friend, Daniel, already waiting for him, grinning like a mischievous fox. "Ah, here comes the man of the moment," Daniel laughed, standing up to shake his hand. "Mr. CEO, how is business?" Oliver dropped into his chair and let out a loud, satisfied laugh. "Daniel, my friend, you did an excellent job last night. You should have seen the way she grabbed that card like it was oxygen." Daniel burst into laughter. "I swear, Oliver, that girl wasted no time at all. Before I even finished talking, she had already taken it. I wanted to tell her to think about it first, but she was already smiling like someone who won the lottery." Oliver leaned back, shaking his head in amusement. Can you imagine? 2 years of a relationship, gone in seconds. She didn't even hesitate. Women, huh? Daniel wiped an imaginary tear from his eye. "Money is the real love, my friend. If only she knew who she just dumped." Oliver grinned. "That's the best part. Let her enjoy her so-called rich man. By the time she realizes the truth, it will be too late." They laughed heartily, their voices echoing in the office. But beneath the laughter, Oliver felt a strange relief. He had dodged a bullet, and now he had all the time in the world to focus on his business, and maybe, just maybe, to discover what true love really felt like. By the time Oliver returned to his yard that evening, his old, dusty clothes were back on. He stepped in, stretching and yawning, playing his role perfectly. He walked past Olivia's door, but as expected, she was already outside, sifting through a large bowl of flour. Her tiny workspace was set up beside her window. A simple wooden table, a rolling pin, and a few trays of dough, neatly arranged. She was kneading with full concentration, her small hands pressing into the dough with practiced ease. "Ah, lover boy," she called out the moment she spotted him. "How was work today?" Oliver sighed dramatically and shook his head. "Olivia, my sister, I don't even know what to say. There was no work today. No money. She clapped her flour-covered hands together and laughed. You see? I told you before. Poor people like you should not be falling in love. Look at your life now. He chuckled and collapsed onto the wooden bench near her workspace. It is not easy. Hunger is about to finish me. Oh dear. Olivia exclaimed, shaking her head. Lover boy. So this gold-digging girlfriend of yours didn't even leave you a little money before she left? Oliver smirked. Will you ever stop reminding me? Olivia didn't respond immediately. Instead, she wiped her hands on a small cloth, went inside her room, and returned minutes later with a steaming plate of jollof rice and fried plantain. She placed it in front of him. Oliver's stomach growled on cue even though he had eaten in his office. Olivia, you are a lifesaver. She grinned. That's your business. But food is not the only thing I will give you. Before Oliver could ask what she meant, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded 1,000 naira note. She pressed it into his palm. Oliver froze, staring at the money. What is this for? It's money, she said simply. Use it to buy beer so that you wouldn't think much. At least, don't let depression kill you before you find another gold digger to love. He stared at her, something stirring in his chest. This girl, she had nothing, yet she gave so much. But her mouth was the problem. He swallowed the lump in his throat and grinned. Olivia, you are impossible. Just eat, she said, rolling her eyes. I have work to do. As Oliver ate, he watched Olivia work, her hands moving expertly as she shaped the dough into perfect circles, pressing them flat and setting them aside to dry. You are really hard-working, he commented between mouthfuls. She looked up. Hard-working how? This business of yours, he said, gesturing at the neatly arranged flour products. You work so hard. It is not easy to do all this. Olivia sighed and wiped sweat from her forehead. This is what I know how to do. One day, I will have my own factory. I will supply flour across the country. This is not just a small local business for me. Oliver raised a brow. A factory? She nodded. Yes, a factory. I have big dreams, lover boy. My flour business will be bigger than all these imported ones that people keep rushing to buy. He smiled, surprised by her ambition. Olivia, I must admit, you may talk too much, but you are really intelligent. She laughed. You're just realizing that? Now eat your food before you faint in front of me. Oliver shook his head and continued eating. This girl wasn't just local, she had sense. Oliver found himself spending more time around Olivia than he ever imagined. It wasn't that he had nowhere else to be. He could easily be in his penthouse apartment, enjoying air conditioning and gourmet meals. But there was something about Olivia, something raw and unpolished, that made her company irresistible. She was full of life, laughter, and an undying ambition that he had never seen in anyone before. And despite having so little, she gave freely. Her time, her food, and even her money. It was something Sophia, his ex-girlfriend, had never done. Each evening after he returned from work, he would sit on the wooden bench outside Olivia's tiny space, watching her roll out dough, fry chin-chin, or package small bags of flour. And as she worked, she talked. Not about clothes, money, or the latest trends. Olivia spoke about dreams. One evening, Oliver leaned back against the wall, stretching his legs in front of him. Olivia was busy rolling out a fresh batch of dough, her hands dusted in white flour, her brows furrowed in concentration. You're always working, Oliver observed, folding his arms. Don't you ever get tired? Olivia snorted. Tired? My dear, when you have dreams as big as mine, there is no time to get tired. Oliver chuckled. Dreams, huh? You always talk about them. What exactly do you want to do with all this flour business? Olivia paused, looking up at him with a determined expression. I want to build a factory. Oliver tilted his head, intrigued. A factory? Yes, she said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Not just any factory. A flour processing factory. I want to produce flour that will be sold across the country, maybe even exported. I want my brand to be bigger than all these foreign ones people keep buying. Oliver raised his brows. That's a big dream, Olivia. She nodded proudly. Of course it is. But that's the thing about dreams. They have to be big. If they are too small, then they're just wishes. Oliver studied her for a moment. There was no hesitation in her voice, no doubt. She truly believed in this dream, and she was working toward it with everything she had. And how do you plan to do this? He asked. Olivia wiped her hands on a cloth and sighed. I have a plan. I'm saving money, little by little. I buy flour in bulk, process it, and resell it. But that's not enough. I need more machines, better packaging, and a bigger space. Right now, I'm doing everything manually, but one day, I'll have machines that will do the work in half the time. Oliver smiled. That's impressive. She grinned, a proud glint in her eyes. You think so? Of course. It's not every day you meet someone with such big plans, especially someone who actually works toward them instead of just talking. Olivia laughed. Well, I wasn't born with a silver spoon, so I don't have a choice. If I want a better life, I have to work for it. Oliver's smile faded slightly as her words hit him. He was born with a silver spoon. Everything he had ever wanted had come to him easily. But Olivia? She was fighting for every single thing she had. And that made her incredible. The more time Oliver spent around Olivia, the more he realized how deeply she believed in her dream. One night, as they sat outside under the soft glow of a nearby street lamp, Olivia shared another part of her vision. I don't just want to make money for myself, she said, staring at the sky. I want to help people. I want to employ young girls like me who don't have much. Give them jobs so they can support their families. I don't want to be the only one succeeding while people around me suffer. Oliver exhaled. You're really something else, Olivia. She laughed. Why do you say that? Because you think differently. Most people just want money for themselves. They don't care about anyone else. She shrugged. What's the point of success if you can't use it to help others? If I ever become rich, I want to make sure I give back. I want to build a community bakery where people can come and learn how to make flour-based products and sell them. I want to train young women, give them a source of income. Oliver was silent for a long moment. He had been around rich people his whole life. People who had more than they could ever spend. Yet they only thought of themselves. But here was Olivia, a girl who barely had enough to survive. Yet she was already planning how to help others when she made it. Something deep inside him stirred. If there was anyone who deserved success, it was her. Oliver felt something he had never felt before. He wanted to be part of Olivia's dream, not as a stranger watching from the sidelines, but as someone who helped make it happen. But he couldn't reveal himself yet. Not until he was sure. Not until he knew that Olivia wasn't like the rest. Days turned into weeks, and Oliver continued his routine. Every morning, he left the yard in his construction clothes, only to change into his expensive suits before heading to his company. Every evening, he returned to sit with Olivia, listening to her talk about her dreams, watching her work tirelessly to make them a reality. And with each passing day, his admiration for her grew. One evening, as Olivia prepared a fresh batch of chin-chin, Oliver sat nearby, watching her. You really love doing this, don't you? He asked. She smiled as she scooped the fried snacks onto a tray. I do. It's my passion. Some people think it's just a small business, but to me, it's everything. Oliver nodded slowly. One day, your factory will be real, Olivia. And when that day comes, I will be there to see it. Olivia laughed. You? You don't even have a stable job, and you're talking about my future factory? Oliver smirked. You never know. Life is full of surprises. She rolled her eyes. Sure, lover boy. Now help me pack these into bags. You might be jobless, but at least you can be useful. Your mouth will surely send you to jail one day. Oliver chuckled and got to work, helping her as the warm evening breeze swept through the yard. He wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear. Olivia was different from anyone he had ever met. And whether she knew it or not, she had already captured his heart. Olivia emerged from her tiny room, balancing a large basket on her hip. The sweet aroma of freshly made chin-chin and buns drifted from the woven basket, mixing with the crisp morning air. Oliver, who had been sitting on a wooden bench outside, watching her prepare for the day, stretched lazily. Where are you going with all that? He asked, raising a brow. Olivia smiled as she adjusted the basket. To the motherless baby home. I go there every Saturday. Oliver sat up straight. Motherless baby home? Yes. She dusted off her hands. I take some of my products there for the kids. They love them, and it makes them happy. Oliver blinked. You do this often? Every week. She shrugged. It's nothing much, just my little way of giving back. He stared at her for a moment, unable to hide his admiration. Olivia barely had enough for herself, yet she still found a way to give. How was it possible for someone to have such a kind heart? Can I come with you? He asked suddenly. She raised an eyebrow. You? Why? I just want to see, he said. I want to know why you do this. Olivia chuckled. All right, lover boy. But don't say I didn't warn you. Those kids are a handful. Oliver smiled. I can handle it. And so, with Olivia leading the way, they set off toward the motherless baby home. The orphanage was a simple building with peeling yellow paint and a rusted gate. The moment Olivia pushed the gate open, excited squeals erupted from inside. Auntie Olivia. A swarm of children, their faces lighting up with joy, came running toward her. They wrapped their little arms around her legs, some jumping excitedly, while others tugged at her clothes. Oliver watched in awe as Olivia bent down, embracing them all. It was clear she had been doing this for a long time. You came, one of the girls, no older than 6, said with a toothy grin. Of course I came, my darling. Olivia smiled, cupping the child's face. And guess what? The children gasped. What? Olivia lifted the basket. I brought plenty of goodies for all of you. The cheers that followed were deafening. Oliver stepped aside, watching as Olivia handed out the snacks. The way she called each child by name, the way she took time to listen to their stories, and the way they clung to her. It was clear she was more than just a visitor. She was family to them. She didn't go to take pictures and send them to the internet. She went there to be with them. Something in Oliver's chest tightened. This was it. This was the moment he knew. Olivia was the one. The walk back home was quiet. Oliver had spent the entire time reflecting on what he had seen. It wasn't just that Olivia gave. It was the way she did it, the joy she felt in making others happy. She was different from anyone he had ever met, and he didn't want to waste another moment. As they reached the yard, Olivia dropped the empty basket on her table and stretched. Phew, those kids always drain my energy. Oliver chuckled, taking a seat on the wooden bench. They love you. She smiled. And I love them too. A brief silence followed before Oliver cleared his throat. Olivia, I want to ask you something. She turned to him, hands on her waist. What is it? Oliver exhaled. I want you to be my girlfriend. Olivia stared at him for a second before bursting into laughter. A long, hearty laugh that echoed through the yard. Oliver frowned. What's funny?